Each day we traveled farther from all we had known, making our way towards Panchavati, which Ram was told by sages we encountered was the true heart of the forest, mysterious and unspoiled and beautiful, home to beings unlike any we had seen before. Are there Rakshasas? Lakshman asked, voicing the thought that was in all our minds. If so, we need to be prepared to defend ourselves, to kill them. The sages hesitated. One said, there are, though they call themselves by different names and may even look different depending upon the group they belong to. The Rakshasas that live in cities are quite different from the ones that wander here in the forests. Not all of them are ferocious, nor do they all eat human flesh. Another added, many will leave you alone if they don't feel you are danger to them. Ram nodded, though Lakshman looked skeptical. Do they practice evil magic like Tataka and her cohorts, whom Ram and I killed? He asked. Each tribe is unique. Tataka belonged to a militant group that believed the forest was theirs, the last space left to them since humans had taken over most of the cities, and thus they wanted to drive us out through death if necessary. Ender says commented. Some of them know magic, the leader of the group told us. Others are so good at woodcraft they can become invisible whenever they want to. With a smile, he added, why? Some could be watching us right now. I glanced around, half fearful, half excited. I saw nothing. The sage was probably joking with us. But sooner or later, I felt this is in my gut. I would meet a Rakshasa. Would he be anything like Ravan, the only Rakshasa I had seen so far? Somehow, I did not think so. Even from the moment's glimpse I had had of him, I could tell that Ravan was unique. One evening, we came upon a small hermitage. This surprised me. Most rishis who had ashrams lived on the edges of the forest, closer to civilization, partly for safety and partly for practical reasons. I was further surprised when Ram said, I know this place. I have been here before. How can that be? I said. Didn't you say you have never been to this part of the country? I haven't, my husband said. Lakshman, who had been looking around carefully, said, it looks to me like the ashram of that says, what is his name? The one who turned his wife into stone, remember? But wasn't that near Mithila? Mithila. My heart sped up when I heard that beloved name. Could we, by some strange twist of fate, have doubled back unknowingly towards my father's kingdom? Might I perhaps see my parents again? Ram knew what I was thinking. He did that frequently nowadays, perhaps because we spent so much time together. He shook his head a little sadly, his eyes soft with compassion. We're not anywhere near Mithila, dear one, but sages have occult powers, siddhis they have garnered through years of meditation. Perhaps, says Gautam decided to transport his ashram to an entirely new part of the land so that he and his wife could start life afresh. Distracted from my disappointment, I asked, why would he want to do that? And didn't Lakshman just say that he turned his wife into stone? How would he be able to have any kind of life with her? It is because Ram transformed her back into a human being, Lakshman said proudly. I guess my brother has a few powers of his own. Astonished, I turned to my husband. You never told me this. Ram shrugged, modest as always. The subject never came up, and in any case, I didn't do much. We were walking along a forest path when Vishwamitra asked me to place my foot on a particular boulder. I was just as astonished as Lakshman when it changed into a woman. I stared at my husband, this man who could perform such amazing feats so matter of factly and then, without a trace of ego, let them slip from his mind. Who are you? I wanted to ask, but I knew he would only say, what do you mean? You know who I am. Your husband, Lakshman's brother, the exiled son of Dashrath. Intrigued by the story of Ahalya, I pressed Ram until he told me all he knew. Ahalya, the beautiful, was created by Brahma himself, who then gave her in marriage to Gautam the ascetic. Things went well. Gautam busy with his austerities, Ahalya devoted to taking care of him until she came to the notice of Indra. As king of gods, Indra believed that such a beautiful woman should belong to him. He approached Ahalya, promising her luxuries and pleasures beyond imagining, but she was a virtuous wife and rebuffed him. Indra was not ready to give up, however. He waited until a day when the sage went deep into the forest to perform a special yajna. Then he transformed himself magically and, in the guise of Gautam, came to the ashram. Unexpectedly, Gautam returned to ashram as he forgot to take with him his asan, that is, deer leather seating, and surprised to see Indra impersonating him. In his fury, he cursed Indra. Worse, Gautam was equally angry with Ahalya and cursed her too and turned her into stone. Ahalya declared her innocence, pointing out that she was as much a victim of Indra's trickery as Gautam. But it was too late. The curse was in full force. Already her body was petrifying. All Gautam could do at that point was to promise her that a special being would soon be born and his pure and powerful touch would restore her to life. And that is exactly what happened. Lakshman added. I couldn't believe my eyes when a woman, beautiful but pale as a marble statue, rose up from the rubble. Her husband must have sensed the ending of the curse because he appeared suddenly out of nowhere and, thanking Ram, whisked her away. And my brother, enough, Lakshman, Ram said, embarrassed as always by praise. Stop talking and move faster. We must get to the ascetic's hut before dark. Ahalya's story filled me with dissatisfaction. I longed to ask Ram 100 questions, but there was no time. The sun had sunk low already. I followed my husband down a narrow path that wound its way through the trees, while Lakshman, as usual, brought up the rear. In a little while, we came upon a structure that was smaller than the other ashrams I had seen and more modest, a single thatched hut consisting of only a couple of rooms. Unlike in other ashrams, there were no other buildings to house students. Indeed, no students were in sight, making themselves busy sweeping or chopping wood or milking the single cow who stood somewhat forlornly under a tree. Gautam was already at the door, looking quite unsurprised. He must have sensed our coming. He was gaunt and gnarled and severe looking, though when he saw Ram, his face grew soft and affectionate. But I was more interested in the woman who stood behind Gautam, straight and tall and indeed pale as a statue. The ears had whitened her hair and etched wrinkles into the corners of her eyes. But Ahalya was still strikingly beautiful. She seemed pleased to see us, but didn't add any words to her husband's welcome. Indeed, through the evening, as she served us a simple meal of fruits and milk, she was silent as though the stillness of stone had taken over her being. Even when I thanked her for her hospitality, she didn't answer, although she did smile. She has taken a vow of silence, Gautam explained with some pride. It is a severe vow and will bring her much spiritual merit. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a sudden movement. Ahalya, who was on her way to the kitchen, had stopped and turned. She was looking directly at me, and if I read her glance right, it indicated that her husband didn't know the truth, that he didn't understand her at all. There was a mystery here. I hoped I would have a chance to solve it. Over dinner, the men discussed many things that affected the state of our continent of Bharatvarsha. Gautam was surprisingly knowledgeable about issues such as wars and alliances between kingdoms, who controlled the trade routes, the mountain passes, and the river bridges, and Rakshasas, which seemed to be the topic he was most passionate about. They have become dangerously strong lately and better organized. Holy men can hardly live in the forest nowadays without being attacked and routed. Several have had to close their gurukulas and send their students home after a few violent incidents. Even I had to use up my powers, which I gained through decades of meditation, to shift this ashram to a new place when Rakshasas besieged it. They want the entire forest to themselves, to drive us back into the cities. But as you know, Ram, we rishis can't live in cities. We need to be in nature to teach and pray and follow our ancient customs and perform our fire sacrifices. So, there is a conflict, and the Rakshasas are winning because the rishis are not fighters. You have got to help us get rid of them. Ram looked concerned. I knew he took the code of the warrior, honor bound to defend the helpless, very seriously. It was doubly binding when someone asked him directly for aid, as Gautam had just done. A huge change seems to have occurred among the Rakshasas, he said. They seem much more organized and belligerent. Do you have any idea why? Oh, yes, Gautam said vehemently. I know exactly why. All this started happening ever since they banded together under one leader. They are very loyal to him because he lets them live independently in whichever part of the country they wish and asks little of them except fealty in case there is a major war. They send him tithes of their own will, but he never demands. He does not have to. He is so rich that wealth matters little to him. If they are ever in trouble and appeal to him, he immediately sends an army to help them and to train them for the future. That is why they have been winning all the skirmishes. This leader, what is his name? Ram asked. I waited eagerly to hear what Gautam might say. For Rakshasas or not, this person seemed to be a better and smarter ruler than many of the human beings I had come across. But at that moment, Ahalya beckoned me from the alcove. Her arms were full of rushes, and I gathered that she needed my help. I had to follow her. It would have been rude to delay. I felt a pang of regret at not hearing the name of this special Rakshasa king. But being alone with Ahalya would give me the chance to ask her something I had been longing to find out. Ahalya led me into the small room where Ram and I would sleep that night. There I helped her make a bed with the sweet smelling rushes. Her movements were as graceful as a dance, and her eyes affectionate. And once she laid her hand upon my head as though in blessing. But when I tried to initiate a conversation, she remained silent. I had hoped that perhaps when we were away from the men, she would let down her guard and speak. I didn't believe she was observing a vow of silence to gain spiritual merit. I had seen the look she had given me. Meeting Alia had made me realize how starved I was for female companionship. Surely she hungered for it too. I missed Urmila terribly. Our small, inconsequential, laughter filled chatter, our outpouring of the heart. I had been hoping for an opportunity for woman talk and, more importantly, an answer to the question that swelled inside me, troublesome as heartburn. But all my efforts to entice Ahalya into speech failed. The simple bet was soon made. Ahalya turned to leave. It was my last chance. I didn't want to offend or, worse still, hurt her, but I had to know. I clasped her hand, and though her brows drew together in surprise and perhaps displeasure, rushed into speech. Forgive me if I am overstepping my bounds, but an ethical question has been bothering me ever since I heard your story. May I ask? Alia's frown disappeared. She said, I know what you are about to ask. In general, I do not speak of that time in my life. But I will allow you one question because you made a great sacrifice for the sake of love, leaving behind the safety of the palace to follow your husband into grave danger. Danger? I whispered. The way Alia said the word made me uneasy. She seemed to refer to something beyond the usual perils of forest living. Yes, danger. I sensed it looming ahead, appearing suddenly in a form you do not expect it to take. Perhaps my answer will help you when it strikes. Her tone sent a shiver through me. She seemed so sure of the calamity that was about to befall us. But how could it be? Ram and Lakshman were great warriors and always vigilant. I too had kept up with my martial arts practice, even though I knew the men regarded my exercises with amusement. Pushing my misgivings aside, I said, please explain me why you were punished by your husband. Doesn't it go against the dictates of Dharma? You did nothing wrong. You were tricked by Indra. Why should you be made to suffer for his sin? For being a victim? It was unfair. Alia smiled, a smile at once sad and sweet that transformed her face so that I caught a glimpse of the ravishingly beautiful woman she must have been earlier. I tortured myself with these same thoughts many times as I lay stone bound. Yes, that was part of the curse. That I should feel every moment of my interment. Finally, an answer came. When you put your hand in the fire, knowingly or unknowingly, do you not get burned? Such is the ancient law of the universe, of karma and its fruit. The idea of motive is irrelevant to it. I was shaken by her reply. I had always thought motive was more important than action, more even than destiny. Could it be that I was wrong? But now another thought troubled me. Your husband, he condemned you even before he gave you a chance to speak. You had been his faithful wife for many years. He loved you and he knew you loved him. You would never give him cause to doubt you. And yet he forgot all that in an instant and punished you so severely. I understand that he did it in anger, that in anger we can lose ourselves. But you, when you were turned back into a woman, you forgave him. Forgave him not just his jealous, blind fury, but also for not trusting you, for immediately thinking the worst of you. Or did you? And do you still love him? How is it possible to love someone after they do something like that to you? Ahalya turned from me, her face unreadable. I have answered one question as I promised, she said as she left the room. The answer to this one you must figure out through your own life's challenges. They will be upon you soon enough. When I came back to the main room, the men were still discussing Rakshasas. Perhaps that is why destiny brought you to this forest, Gautam was saying, to get rid of them for good, to wipe out their unholy ways, to spread the light of civilization. You must promise me you will try your best to do that. Lakshman nodded in vehement agreement. Ram looked unsure, but then he too bowed in assent. That night, I whispered, because the walls of the ashram, woven of palm fronds, were thin. Gautam did Ahalya wrong. She was innocent, I am convinced of it. But he never gave her a chance to tell her own story before he punished her. Ram said, Gautam is a revered sage. It is not for me to judge such a holy man's motives. I salvaged the situation, didn't I, the best way I could? I had to agree with that, but dissatisfaction still pricked me, a sense of justice left undone. It also bothered me that Ram was so differential to the sages, so quick to accept whatever they did or wanted him to do. That night, I dreamed of Ahalya the moment she turned back into a woman. I saw her emerge from rock limb by limb. I saw on her face not joy but the terrible pain of becoming human again. Says Gautam reached out towards her. His face was suffused with affection and remorse as well. He spoke, and though I couldn't hear his words, I guessed that he asked her pardon. Ahalya hesitated. I tried to read her expression. Was there hurt in it? Was there forgiveness? Because when you truly love someone, how can you not forgive him? Was there the realization that of all the imperfect choices open to her, going back to Gautam was the best one? Finally, He put her hand in his, but she didn't smile and she didn't look at him. Was it then she made the decision that she would punish him the rest of her life by never speaking to him again? So he would always remember what he had done. They receded into mist, leaving me with another lesson. Once mistrust has wounded it mortally, love can't be fully healed again. Thanks for listening.